in and around the booth, come up and grab a seat. You don't need to be leaning against the counters. Kurt, come back up here and sit down. We have our last presentation of the day. I wanted to remind everybody that any program we've had so far up to this point will be posted on NikonUSA.com in the live section, so you can see them as often as you want. If you missed any of the programs, you want to go back and see them again. The last presenter we have today is an amazing photographer and photojournalist. She is a Nikon ambassador, and she's also the co-founder of Think Tank Bags. She's an incredible businesswoman, but she is also a Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist. I'd like to introduce her to the stage now to talk about a movie she created with the Nikon Z7. It's entitled Band on the Run. Nikon ambassador Deanne Fitzmaurice.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here, and I have a couple projects I'm really excited to share with you. Two projects actually shot with the Z7 that I've done over the last couple of months. So about a year ago, I went to the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, and I saw this exhibit, and it was Walker Evans, and it was the American road trip. And I became obsessed with this idea. I need to take a road trip. And so I just started thinking about it and thinking about what is the road trip of 2018. So I went home and I started looking at all my books. I was looking at The Americans by Robert Frank, and it was just on my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about the American road trip. So there's something that's interesting about the creative process. You throw the idea out there and let it just sit. And of course, I'm hoping that a road trip's going to happen. So this is a scene that I pass by all the time in my neighborhood. So I'm dreaming about the American road trip. What is it going to be? And here is this great scene of this smart car and a Cadillac. And I'm thinking, the road trip, what's the great car to take on this trip? So I end up getting a call from Purpose Climate Lab in New York, and they reached out to me and they said, Deanne, I have a project for you. Would you be interested in driving across the country in an electric car? And I thought, that sounds amazing. The idea was this car was going to leave from San Francisco, from the climate summit there, and go to New York and end at the UN. And we were going to be telling stories all along the way about people that are doing great things with renewable energy, green energy, really the unsung heroes that are doing really interesting projects throughout the country. So off we go. I get in the car on the American road trip that I had been dreaming about. And I was hoping that I would find something meaningful to do with the road trip of 2018. And this seemed like a great way to tell some important stories. So we were leaving San Francisco, and I'm looking out the window of the car, and I see this beautiful sunset. So we're leaving the cities, and the first picture I shot, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be in my car, or this car, for 3,000 miles. I'm going to have to come up with something more interesting, shooting out the window of the car. So I'm always looking for storytelling pictures. And so I saw the sunset reflected in the rearview mirror. So trying to tell a story of the road trip. Now this car, it's a Chevy Bolt, and we would drive 238 miles before we had to stop and charge it. Sometimes it would take 4 hours to charge the car. Sometimes it would just take 30 minutes. But oftentimes we would just stop in some of these charging stations would be in a Walmart parking lot. So we had to figure out how to kill time. But it turned out that it was a good thing we had an electric car, because we saw abandoned gas stations like this one. And And we had long days. We would start sometimes at sun up and go till sundown. Sometimes it was 16-hour days. But again, trying to tell stories from within the car. We ended up stopping at this electric bus factory, and it's a place in Southern California where they're producing more electric buses than in any other place in the world. And it's employing 1,000 people. So, yeah, stories about creating jobs and creating clean energy. So, welder working on one of the buses. And traveling through Southern California and into Nevada, we saw solar fields. And we found interesting people like Richard Bird. He's a firefighter in Las Vegas. And he went down to Puerto Rico to help with the hurricane relief efforts. And he got inspired by that. He was thinking, okay, what do we do if our generator goes out and there's no way to power our communities? So he came up with the idea of microgrids powered by solar energy. And he's starting a foundation doing this around the country. And on a road trip, you're bound to see these crazy things on the side of the road. And this was a big rig that burst into flames. So typical in my life, I wasn't able to continue on this entire road trip because I had to leave the trip in Las Vegas and fly to Washington, D.C. for a commitment I had, and it was a Nikon Z7 launch event, and I went there to do a speaking event. So I had to miss out on a little part of this road trip, which involved going through beautiful Red Rock country in Utah. But I caught up with the road trip again in Boulder. And on part of this trip, what we were doing is we were going to talk to some of the mayors of these places that are doing amazing things with green energy. And this is the mayor of Boulder and the mayor of Kansas City. And this is the mayor of a small town called Greensburg, Kansas. Now, this town was completely leveled by a tornado in 2007. We spoke with a Mennonite pastor who talks about how he witnessed his church being completely razed to the ground. And this town, they have rebuilt. After losing 95% of this town, they've rebuilt it, and it's all green energy. Here you can see the staircase to an old church that came down in the 2007 event. But these are the LED lights that they have throughout the town. So just, traveling along and trying to tell these stories of people that are doing some great things while we're in this electric car. In St. Louis, we found that Anheuser-Busch is producing a beer that's made with 100% wind power. And we found out that a lot of the farmers in the Midwest, they're using renewable wind power. They've got wind turbines on their farmlands, and it's creating a lot of revenue for them. So as we're going along on this trip, the organizer of the trip says, Deanne, we've got access to photograph at the top of the wind turbine. And I said, oh, okay, that's great. How do we get up there? Is there an elevator inside? And they said, well, actually, no, there's a ladder. I said, a ladder? We have to climb up a ladder? And so I'm looking, I don't see a ladder on the outside. If it were someone like Corey Rich, who spoke earlier this morning, he would scale up the outside of this thing. But I ended up, if I wanted to get to the top of this, I had to climb a 350-foot ladder. And so that's 35 stories. You know, and I think about that because the hotel I'm staying at here in New York, I'm staying on the 24th story. And I look out the window, and I'm up really high. So this ladder was 35 stories. So I'm thinking, okay, that's the only way I'm going to get up there to shoot a photo. I was nervous about it. I was thinking, okay, I might get claustrophobic in there. I have no idea how big this thing is, what it's going to look like. And so I said, okay, if I want the pictures, I have to do this. So 350 feet, I climbed up this ladder. I had all this metal apparatus around me. I had a safety harness where I was clamped into a cable that went the length of the ladder. I had big carabiners and the hard hat, and I'm carrying my equipment, and I'm wearing these steel-toed boots. So it was clunky, it was heavy, and I gotta tell you, by the time I was getting near the top, I was just beat. You know, my arms were like jello, just like, you know, pulling your weight up that distance. And this smile, by the way, is completely fake. I was really hurting, but I was very excited that I was near the top. And it's a good thing that there's a picture of me at the top because I'll probably never do that again. Yeah, it was worth the hike up there, I have to say. It was absolutely incredible. Now, sometimes it can be really windy up there, and fortunately on this day it wasn't too windy, but it was a little bit windy, enough that the blades were going. But it wasn't like I felt like I was going to get blown off the top. But, you know, I had to clamp into, the whole time you had to be clamped into something. And there wasn't a lot of space either. You know, there's probably about 10 feet up there. But the view was just incredible, looking down and seeing these things and, you know, thinking about the story of these farmers that, yeah, they're struggling, but they're able to create a living by what they're doing with the help of this wind power. And this is a woman that I actually climbed up there to photograph. This is Erin, and she works in wind power there in Illinois. And I just needed to get a picture of her. So it's incredible what you do sometimes for a photo. But it was, the climb up there, I had to be very meditative about it. I had to look straight ahead. There is no way I could look down. Looking down would not have been a good thing, but I just kept looking straight ahead, climbing, you know, one by one. And it was a great adventure, but on the way down, I thought it was going to be really easy. I thought it would be simple to get down, but it wasn't. Because again, every single step I'm holding my weight, and my body was just exhausted from doing that. And it took so long to get down that it was dark when I got down, and the moon's up, and it was actually quite beautiful. And we rode into Detroit, and this is the GM factory where the Chevy Bolt was built. And so we met some of the workers that had built the car, and they were signing this proclamation that we took on the journey from San Francisco to New York. So these are the steel-toed boots that I wore climbing up there. They were a couple sizes too big. Somebody had run out to the store to buy them for me while we're en route. And they were so big and so clunky. I don't know how I climbed up a ladder with these things on. But so that project was shot with the Z7. And I'm loving this camera. It's lightweight, and The next project I'm about to show you, I also used this camera, and really excited about it on so many levels. The way it feels, I'm not sure how many of you here have had a chance to pick it up and hold it. You know, the grip, it's lightweight, and it's amazing, autofocus. So in July, the end of July, I got a call from Nikon. And they said, Deanne, we'd like you to come to New York. We have a top secret project we want you to do. We can't tell you anything about it. So I fly to New York, and I meet with the team at headquarters, and they say, okay, here is the project. And I was able to unveil the new Z7 that it was, you know, no one had heard of it yet, no one had seen it, and I was so excited when I saw it. And Nikon said, Deanne, go on out and shoot a project with this camera, whatever you want to do. So I had spent about probably, you know, a week or two researching a story, and I found a story I was really excited about doing, and it was a cowboy story. And I was able to get the access I wanted to do to tell the story I wanted to tell, and at the last minute, it fell apart. And I was really worried. I'm thinking, oh, geez, I've got this deadline. I've got to come up with this project, and it just fell apart. Now what am I going to do? So I was devastated. But I'm sure, you know, you all know, it's like we all are in that situation. It's like, okay, how do I handle this? So I was trying to think about what would be the project that I would do. About the same time, my husband went and saw this band play. My friend Lisa, she had said, hey, Deanne, there's this great band playing. Come, you got to come see them play. I grew up with them in Hawaii, and they're amazing. And I said, I'm going to be out of town, but my husband Kurt would probably like to go. So they went. They saw the band play. The next day, I called my husband, and I said, hey, how was that show anyway, that show you went to see with this band that's Lisa's friend? And he said, you're not going to believe it. They are so good. They're so good, as a matter of fact, that I brought them home with me, and they're staying here. And that there are sleeping bags everywhere. They're kids. They've got little kids, and they're in sleeping bags. So the band is called the Ron Artiste Band, Ron Artiste II and the Truth. So Ron grew up in Hawaii, and he grew up as part of a family band. His parents had worked in Hollywood with some big-name musicians, and when they wanted to raise a family, they moved to Hawaii, and they raised a family of 11 kids. Now, Ron Artiste, he is the oldest son, and so he has his own band. And so that's the band. They're staying at my house, and I'm still devastated about my project falling apart. What am I going to do for this project? And Kurt, my husband, he says, why don't you do a project on this band? And I'm thinking, well, you know, what's the story? I got to come up with some still images. It's music. How am I going to, you know, how am I going to come up with a project with this? So I'm listening to their music, and he's telling me about them, and he says, no, they're great. They have a little 1-year-old, and he jokingly, he says, she's the drummer in the band. And I'm saying, wait a minute, this is intriguing. I want to know more about this. So, you know, so it's a family. They travel. This is Ron and his wife, Julia. She was a detective in Germany, and she gave up her life there when she fell in love with Ron, and they, you know, she moved to Hawaii. They started a family, and they just went on the road because they love because he believes in his music so much, and his music is soulful and just wonderful, kind of bluesy and rock, and you'll hear some of it. But it feels like they're just on the precipice of really making it big. They're so good, but they're, you know, still kind of struggling to make it all work. And they stay with host families sometimes, but you know, they're out there and they're playing gigs all the time. They just went from Japan a couple days ago. They're back in California now. And actually, I heard that they stayed at my house last night. And this is little Ida Marie. And so I talked to them. I said, can I come on the road with you and do a story? And they said, yes, come on the road. So off I went on this road trip. And we started in San Francisco, and we went to Berkeley and Santa Cruz, and then we went up to Seattle. And I gotta tell you, so I'm working along, I'm doing these pictures in still images. And I start realizing, you know what? This story is not about my photography. It's about their music. We gotta hear their music. So I really have to switch this project to video. I have to do this project in video because the viewer has to hear their music. So I already, had made an agreement that I was going to do this as a still photography project. But I said, you know what? I got to call Mike Corrado at Nikon and just see if there's any way I could do this as a video project instead. So I was getting up my courage to call him. And I was in my hotel early in the morning. I went and got my coffee, and I said, okay, I got to call him now. So I grabbed my phone, I go to call him, and my phone rings. Mike Corrado. And I said, wow, that's weird. And so I said, hey, Mike, what's going on? And he says, Deanne. I tell him, I said, it's weird, I was just going to call you. But he says, Deanne, I have to tell you something. I have to ask you a huge favor. Is there any way you could switch your project to video? Isn't it great when those things happen? It's like, wow, this is like some of the magic, I think, that happens with this band. Really, it's about this band and it's about their music. And so I was like, now I'm switching gears. Now I got to do a video project. But I was excited about it, but still it's a little like, how am I going to pull this off? So I'm on the road. I've got my Z7, and I got to figure out, okay, I'm switching gears here. I got to do video. So I just got this camera, but I couldn't believe how easy it was to use, that I was able to focus without any kind of a loop. The viewfinder was so bright, and it was really easy to stabilize with this 5-stop VR built in. So I just started rolling video. My friend Lisa, who I mentioned earlier, the friend that introduced me to the band, she came on the trip. She was helping to produce the trip. She knew them, which really helped getting access to the band. They love her and said, yes, you can come, you can follow us on this road trip. And she was helping me doing second camera work. But it was difficult because it was all very secretive. We had these cameras, and we had to put black tape over the part that said Nikon, and we had to be very covert. But here's the short video we made.
And I ask myself, what is it we couldn't learn is just the soul? What is it that we could only learn by being in this body, being in this world, being in this planet? These connections, with these people.
For searching for answers, I can't lie. This is what I'm fighting for. Searching for answers. If a day arrives, I can't see.
Daddy, come on. Daddy, come on. Daddy, come on.
Is this what I'm fighting for? But sometimes I try and see the light, digging deep inside my soul. I cannot go just round, just wasting time, talking about what he said or she said. Wow, it feels so crazy, just to give it all gone. You gotta learn to live, see, digging deep your heart, sing about it.
I wrote this song about 7 years ago, about the love of my life. Julia. She's my everything. I look at her and I just think, the song I never thought I'd sing. Wow. Smiles brighter than the sun above, and I'll always call her mine. Call her mine. I give the world an apology in advance, 'cause I'll be gone a good while. 'Cause when love calls, I've got to go. She's my very heart. And I've seen I just trust her, and I love her, and I adore her, and I'm grateful for having her in my life and being a part of her life. And yeah, she's everything to me. So we're going to get paid half of what we thought we were going to get paid tonight. We're human just like anybody else, man, but when it seems like everything's going wrong, we've got no more money, and we don't know what we're going to do, what I just do in an instant is I just look back and I see if I would have done anything different. There's going to be a lot of things to trip you up along the way when you're trying to do the right thing. I just take a deep breath, and I try to find a way to comfort everybody who's walking with me, and I just trust that it's going to be all right. Sometimes I really can't see how. Thankfully, it always is. Oh, I say, carry me along, Lord, and not my own. Help me out now. Sing and carry me along, Lord, I'm still your child. Come on, boys. And some days, said this world try and get me down. I never worry, no, 'cause I'm leaning on you. One more time. For some reason, you had to go through the things you had to go through. I see you made you stronger. But remember, don't stop trusting. You're an amazing person. We all love you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, man. Thank you all. Thank y'all so much, man.
Thank you. So, yes, this band, Ron Artis II and The Truth, aren't they amazing? So, yeah. So it's easy to make a video when you have a band like this and the Z7. Thank you. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Deanne Fitzmaurice, Nikon ambassador and amazing filmmaker. Thank you so much. Guys, we have more education to come.